first question is, who was the most important athlete when you were young?
Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris, battling for the home run crown every year. And then Roger Maris had that fantastic year. Football, probably Bart Starr. And never followed much basketball. But Gordie Howe and Ted Lindsay and Sid Abel and all those guys from the Red Wings, of course, were really, really big. So Wings were big back then, too.
Who was your personal favorite?
My favorite player when I was growing up was Rocky Colavito from the Tigers. There was a huge monster trade with Cleveland, and they ended up with Rocky Colavito, and it was just this. I mean, it wasn't like a whole lot of players. It was just, it might have just been one for one trade, but it was a really big thing, and I loved Rocky Colavito.
Okay. What are the biggest things that you see in how sports have changed from growing up to today?
In terms of professional sports?
It's really just whatever stands out to you.
Well, the first thing that would stand out to me would be that there are so many more opportunities for females now. I mean, when I was a kid, even in high school, my choices were tennis, basketball, or field hockey. And that was in Detroit, growing up in Detroit. And, there just weren't that many opportunities. I mean, even there was no girls' softball for little kids. Now the kids start playing soccer and baseball and t-ball and stuff through Parks and Rec and basketball at 6 years old or 5 years old. And I think that's fantastic because a lot of them go on to really do well. College scholarships are obtained and all that kind of stuff. But as far as professional sports, I hate the fact that it's so business-like now. It used to be loyalty mattered, and somebody was happy to be with a team, and fans would just adore players, and, even a player that's just so beloved by the fans, he might go somewhere else just because he wants to go somewhere else and make a little bit more money, and that's unfortunate.
We can just stay with the female sports right now. There's a girl on your son's hockey team. How does that make you feel when you see that she's, one of the best players out there? And
she is one of the best. I think it's great. I'm glad that her parents are encouraging it and willing to do it, and I'm hoping she ends up with a college scholarship for it, or at least having a wonderful career in some way, even if it's just playing rec hockey all the time. It's nice to see. It's real nice to see. And right now, she's still changing in the boys' locker room because they're only 7 and 8 years old. Pretty soon, she's going to be in a locker room all by herself, possibly. It's not nearly as rare as it was. Back in the late 70s, I worked at a hospital, and somebody that I worked with, a woman who was a nurse, played hockey on a men's team, and that was so unheard of. I mean, that was just so rare, and she was really good, too. But sometimes guys would go gunning for her and stuff because they didn't think she should be out there. But hopefully that's going to change. But there are a lot of women's teams now anyway. Back then, she had to play on a men's team. There were no women's teams. But there are all kinds of women's teams now. So,
growing up, how did your parents handle you, wanting to play sports? And
oh, they were fine with me playing anything except football. Still mad about that. Even if I swore we were going to play touch football, they still didn't want me playing. They thought I was going to get hurt, and but I played baseball all the time. I mean, I was a real tomboy. I hung out with all the boys in the neighborhood, and I wasn't the only girl that was playing, but it was cool in Detroit because every square mile had its own park. So we were at the park all the time, and you'd just start playing baseball with whoever was there, and it was just a lot of fun. But football was considered too rough, so I wasn't allowed to do that. But and I didn't play any organized sports because there weren't any until in junior high. I played basketball. that was the first time I was able to be on like a real team, and that was a whole lot of fun, especially the away games, going on the bus and everything.
Did you ever feel like an outsider in those playground games? Or were there plenty of other girls playing?
No, there weren't that many girls playing, but no, I never felt like an outsider. I held my own, so I was fine. Everybody was cool. It was just a bunch of kids from the neighborhood playing ball. Wouldn't even know all of them necessarily, or we'd play 500, or we'd play pickle or whatever, and it was fine. It didn't matter.
I know that you've went to some Shack games. I know that the Shack moved and everything, but how does it feel, to go to a women's professional sporting event?
I'd rather watch men. I hate to say that, but I mean, with hockey or anything, it's faster, the men's game. I'm glad that there are all these opportunities, of course. I mean, I never would, scoff at any of that or think that that's not wonderful, that these people are making money to do something they just absolutely love. I wish I had those kind of chances. But, I hate to admit it, but generally I'd rather watch the men compete.
Do you think that women's sports will ever catch up to men's?
No, I don't think so, unfortunately. They'll never make as much money. They'll never get as much notoriety. You can have, the best player in any of the different sports, and they're still not going to get the attention that any of the more mediocre males get. And that's just, sadly enough, the way of the world. It's nothing to lose any sleep over. Just the way it is.
How has money changed sports over your lifetime?
Well, it's changed it a lot. One example, and I know this is kind of a silly example, but there used to be double headers in baseball all the time. You go to 2 games for the price of 1, and they don't have many double headers anymore, and it's because the owners got greedy, in my opinion, and decided, well, we're not going to sell as many things at the concession stands. We're not going to keep, people aren't going to keep eating and drinking if they're there for 7 hours as opposed to 3 hours, and it's made a big difference. The players are, I oftentimes feel like they're not as much in love with the game as in love with their paycheck that they get, and that's where the loyalty factor comes in too. They should be so grateful for what they are able to do with their lives, to be playing a game and making money at it, and a lot of them just say, oh, somebody will offer me more money, well, I'll just go there. And, that's a shame. It really is.
Because of that, I guess distance, with the athletes now and everything, how do you feel that your sons, will they be a different kind of sports fan than you think you were growing up? Do you think that once they start realizing the same money problems, that sports just aren't going to be the same to them as it was to you?
I hope not. They're going to grow up with it like this, with people making millions of dollars in a year and more money than they can ever spend in a lifetime. No, I hope they're just as passionate about sports as I am and love it, as much as anybody. And hopefully that won't be a factor. The enjoyment of the game is such a big thing. I mean, I love to watch pro football. Is my favorite of all the sports to watch. Not college, but pro football. And, I hope they love it as much as I do and can spend a Sunday, watching things like that, no matter how much the guys are making.